Welcome to the second of the From Linear to Circular Network edition. I'm James George, and I'm one of your hosts for this afternoon. And I'm also joined by the very able Seb. Seb, good afternoon.
Thank you, James. Good afternoon. Yes, my name is Seb. I'm from the learning team here at the MacArthur Foundation. So very pleased to be and very pleased to be talking about circular design. It's one of my favorite topics.
And of course, this webinar wouldn't be complete on design without our experts, and we'll introduce those in a moment. But before we get onto that, just a little bit of a rundown quickly on how you can interact best with this session. Obviously, there's been some homework set earlier in the week, and we'll get to that in a bit. There's also the Slack channel and the community that you can use to talk to the other participants. But in terms of this webinar itself, there are two functions that are open to you this afternoon. One is the chat and one is the Q&A. What we'd ask is for the chat, if you just use that to communicate broadly your thinking, but also talking to other participants within the session. If you have specific questions though that you want to put to either Seb or myself or to the two guests that we've got, please use that function, the Q&A function. We've got a very high-powered team behind the scenes who are going to be monitoring those questions and putting them through to Seb and I to ask to the guests. So
let's be honest, James, it's more likely they're going to have questions for the guests than for us. They'll probably figure out pretty quickly they're not going to get too much out of us.
That may be the case, Seb, but we've got to give people the option.
By the way, I've been on the topic of Slack, because I know you mentioned the group. People have been, one of the prompts we gave last week was to post these Giphies. And people have been doing a fantastic job of that. I really encourage people to navigate to that window and have a look. There's cats looking at washing machines. There's Star Wars. There's Minions. It's amazing how all of these things can somehow point back towards the circular economy, but they do, and it does make sense when you scroll through the feed. So after this webinar, I really encourage you to make sure you're on that channel and join in the fun.
You mentioned cats, Seb, but any particular favorites?
There's actually quite a few cats ones. My favorite one is there's a meme or a GIF that focuses on the nature of a new narrative, and I think that was a very key message from the first webinar. This notion that it's a new story, a new way of thinking, the transition from where we are today to a circular economy. And so I'm very pleased that the person who posted that one had picked up on that key message and found a gift that represented it.
Excellent. And that's a great segue as well into when we think about doing things differently. Surely that starts with design, which is obviously going to be the subject of our conversation this afternoon. And whilst we are knowledgeable, Seb, we are not designers. But we've asked a poll actually already to the team out there. Do you consider yourself a designer? With the answer yes, no, or maybe. Are we able to see the results of that?
Should I end the poll and share the results? I can tell you that we have a group of people who do not consider themselves to be a designer at the moment. 54%.
54%, yeah. And the other split fairly equally between yes and maybe. Well, the good news is we've got two excellent guests here who are going to hopefully help us all understand a little bit more where design plays a key function within transitioning towards a circular economy. I'm delighted, and if I can ask our guests please to turn their cameras on. We're joined by Anna Q from the foundation. Anna is involved in building relationships and establishing collaborations with organizations that develop design challenges, award and competitions. She's also responsible for designing bespoke experiences to engage with a diverse range of audiences for the foundation, working in the circular design team. And then secondly, we have Serena. Serena is a long-standing friend of the foundation. She first started getting to understand what the foundation was about back in 2013 when she worked at WEF, engaged with us first around 2015 when she was selected for a MacArthur Fellow. She has a MBA and MSc from Yale, specializing in industrial ecology and green design, and a strong passion for materials. And I love this little comment that you gave us, Serena, around the right choice of materials is extremely important in enabling a healthy and sustainable circular economy. So Anna and Serena, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Oh, Anna, you're still on mute, I think.
So typical. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks for having us here.
Super excited. Thanks so much, James, for inviting us.
No, my pleasure. Great to have you both here, and we're going to explore a number of topics, but I want to get stuck straight into it if I can. So I'm going to come to both of you, I guess, first, and I'll start with you, Serena, with a very simple question. What got you into design?
Well, indeed, you said it already. You gave it away a little bit, James, is the fact that throughout time, as we have developed a numerous amount of products out in the market, complexity has become the new normal. And with complexity, we cannot actually enable the redesign of products. We cannot enable the circular economy. And if we can actually choose materials wisely, we can actually enable the circular economy. And so for me, design is the first step. Design thinking is the first step when you choose to design a new product, put a new product out in the market. And the choice of material is a fundamental step in that redesign process, because without it, you cannot enable a true circular economy.
Excellent stuff.
And Anna, we obviously have done quite a bit of work on design here at the MacArthur Foundation. That question was a question you wanted us to ask. Why were you interested to find out whether people consider themselves to be a designer or not a designer?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because normally we understand that designers are people who have studied design, or we associate it normally to like the beauty or graphics design, or we have a concept of design that we might need to evolve for the circular economy. And what that means is that for us, like designers or the creatives are those that when they make decisions, they have the power to influence how the resource flows look like. So how, so as Serena was saying, there are people that might have not been studying design, but they have the power to choose what materials certain products are going to be made from, and that impacts the resource flows. And yeah.
Thanks,
So there's
Anna.
something here, whether you're a designer or not.
Me?
I said, so there's something in this session, whether you're a designer or not.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes is the answer.
Yes, Anna.
You were
Yes.
looking for. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you were
much...
asking me.
I think we hear quite a lot from one of our colleagues who you work very closely with, Anna, Joe Isles, around this is the subject of design can, first instance, and I'm sure that poll leads to it, that it can be for people who consider themselves to be a designer with a big D. Or actually, this is also for those individuals who are designers with a small d, people who are in processes through the manufacturing stage, who may not be designers, but have influence on the way products are created and designed. And I think we'll get into that a little bit more. Serena, we're getting lots of really nice comments about how organized your kitchen appears. I just wanted to throw that out there because it is a very well organized backdrop. Maybe this is a peer inside your very, very well organized mind.
Can I just comment on that? This is where I work every day. And so I have 2 screens and everything because of coronavirus. And I didn't want to change the setting. And I thought, well, might as well, doesn't matter. It's coronavirus setting.
It's a very enviable backdrop of a kitchen. Mine looks nothing like that. So Serena, coming back to you then and your work at DSM, talk us through a little bit through that. You have this really great concept around how you redesign items that, I can't remember the exact phrase you use, you redesign items that just are big and bulky. Talk us through a little bit around how your journey has been there.
Yeah, sure. Maybe it's better if I explain a little bit about DSM Niaga, because not everybody might be familiar with us. DSM Niaga actually is what I call the circular redesign arm of DSM. DSM is a global material science company, and they specialized in either engineering plastics and resins or nutrition. Niaga sits in the engineering plastics and resin businesses, and specifically resin. And basically, it all starts with a click-and-click adhesive. So it's an adhesive that has the power to connect two things and then unclick and decouple those two things, and those can be reused or recycled again and again. We didn't stop there, though, and as you rightly mentioned, we have started with enabling the redesign of big, bulky products. So we had we basically asked for help of some students from Amsterdam University, and they helped us scoping which ones are the biggest contributor to landfill by volume. And so we realized that mattresses, carpets, and furniture do take a lot of volume in landfill. And because these products normally are made of 40, 50 different materials, and they're all interlinked, so cross-linked, they are very, very difficult to recycle, basically impossible. So normally what you would do with these products is to just send them straight to incineration. And what we did is to look at the function, the core functions of these products, making sure that we would keep the quality the same, but redesigning it from scratch. And by redesigning, we went from 40 different interlinked, cross-linked materials down to maybe one or two. So we really strive for either monomateriality or simple materials. And then we made sure that through different lab testing, we would be able to decouple them and either enable reuse or recycling models associated with those. So just in a nutshell, that's what we've been doing at DSM Niaga. It's exciting because we just launched a mattress product together with Alpine is in the market, and we are about to launch our carpet made of polyamide and polyester, so two materials. So exciting times despite COVID, and we are really going strong, and we're really happy that we are part of the circular economy.
People will hear that shift from 40 odd materials to like one or two. I mean, that's quite drastic. Are there any trade-offs? You know, what it seems so simple in some ways, but it feels like so some of our viewers will surely be thinking, well, what's the catch?
Yeah, of course. It's first of all, it's not easy. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of materials knowledge. But what we realize is actually by redesigning something like a mattress, for instance, we enable different properties. So first of all, we enable airflow to be much, much stronger than a traditional mattress. So you sleep much comfortably and much more sort of freshly, so to say, than a traditional mattress. And what we also solve for is performance and function. So if you think about like a traditional carpet that is made of ton of materials, like latex is one of the components, and latex is highly flammable. Well, we stripped latex completely out of the equation, and that enables a product to be flame retardant naturally. So you actually reduce toxicity also in the product. So we didn't just solve for recycling, we also solve for healthy materials. And that's one of the sort of added benefits that we found like along the way. It's not that we solved for it initially, but then it became part of our core value proposition. I think like the only downside is that these prototypes are expensive at the beginning. So scale is the only way to make it viable in the market. It's not a free lunch.
It's really interesting. I wonder in that iteration process, when you were looking at actually the manufacture and coupling and decoupling versus the different types of material, which was the first priority there? Did you approach this in isolation, or was it very much about, we know what we know, the biases that we have about making mattresses in this example don't work, and we need to come at this fresh in all respects? What was the priority there in that particular thinking?
Well, so we are lucky because, so as DSM Niaga, we're not like ourselves manufacturer per se. I mean, we do manufacture carpet, we do manufacture part of the components, but we are lucky because we redesign and we co-create together with our runner partners. And so, for instance, in the process of redesigning a mattress, we actually leveraged all the knowledge product knowledge of Alping. So they knew where to go. They knew that the fact that what their key core headaches were in their challenges, and we were able to redesign that together. So, I mean, for instance, our initial journey was carpet. That's where we started. And with carpet, initially we wanted to make it fully bio-based. But we realized that at the time, bio-based was very difficult to recycle again and again. So we switched to something, we strive for, okay, what is the easiest thing that we can recycle again and again? And PET and then polyester turned out to be one of the polymers that you can recycle again and again, because you can use recycled content, 100% recycled content, and make it recyclable. So the design for recycling was the first thing. And then everything else came after.
I think it's a good time to zoom out. I see someone has posted in the chat window William McDonough's quote: "Design is the first signal of human intention." I'm sure both Serena and Anna are familiar with that one. Anna, why is design so essential for a circular economy from the foundation's perspective?
Yeah, so at the foundation, when we talk about why design is key, it's mainly for 3 reasons, and there might be many more, but I think that these are the more outstanding ones. First of all, everything that surrounds us has been designed by someone. And what we mean by that is that we include like products such as a pen or like a glass, this laptop or the house we live in. But it's also about the intangible designs that surround all this. So someone has designed how our trash is being picked, or someone has designed how packages are being delivered. And all this, and I'm moving to the second one, it's a group of important decisions. So very important decisions are being made during the design stage. And what we mean by important in this case is that these decisions will have consequences beyond the stage where they are being made. So yeah, we can make decisions like if I'm designing a t-shirt, I'm making decisions about the material, like the fabrics, the buttons, like how am I assembling the different pieces. But I'm also making decisions when I decide that this t-shirt will be purchased in a different country. And I'm also making decisions when I decide that this t-shirt is going to be made of such high quality that it deserves to have multiple users. Yeah.
It's a really interesting element there, Anna, and something I've heard a couple of times when you get this idea of siloing within organizations. The designers come together and they design the best product based on the criteria that they have, and that criteria can be circular or it can be based on innovation, whatever it might be. Not that those two are mutually exclusive. And then they pass it on to their procurement team, who are effectively weighed and measured by KPIs that don't align with what the design team have been doing. And then say, well, you know, that's all good and well designing a product like that, but we're not going to be able to source the material. We're not going to be able to create it in that way. And I think that's a really interesting point. And I wonder, Serena, did you guys find when you started this journey, and you used the example of the mattress, but I'm sure that thinking was in there long before that. What kind of biases did you, or what things did you need to change in making this circular approach when you approach these products?
Well, first of all, there's I really like your point and the point that Anna made, because a lot of the time when you make design choices, you make it in silo, and that's the biggest mistake. I was having a chat earlier with Anna. We were getting to know one another, and when we were talking about material and design of design of products and materials, a lot of the time people just enter a room and say, oh, I want to have a new pair of shoes, or I want to have a new product X, right? And they of course solve for the quality and the function and performance. Absolutely, that's really important. There has to be designing, has to be captivating, has to be attractive. But at the same time, what is missing is the choice of material. And when then the question goes on to procurement and then onto the sourcing of the raw materials and the chemicals, there's never that connection between, okay, like, is this material safe? Is this material safe, not just from a human health point of view, but also from the environment? And that's what we try to aim also in our companies, to always go back to, is this product going to be safe in the end? Is this product going to enable a safe circular economy? So I just wanted to circle back, so pun intended, onto that point, because multidisciplinary teams are extremely crucial when it comes to product design. And it's not just about the design, like the sketching or the system thinking, but it's really about understanding the environment and understanding the impact that our choices as designers, whether capital D or small d, have on those. So I just wanted to.
It makes me, some of the conversations we've been having so far make me think of an expression that I've definitely made up and not stolen from anyone else, which is that you can't unscramble an omelette. So the idea that, you know, like when you went to redesign the carpets or the mattress, you had to go back to kind of the beginning and be like, well, what's going into this? What are the features? And Anna was reflecting that in some ways in terms of like, well, everything around us is designed. So this idea that we can do something at the end is quite challenging, and that's why it's so important for circular economy.
Except I just want to build on that and basically and recap like the 3 reasons why design is essential for the circular economy. So the first one is that everything around us is being designed by someone. And the second is that there are many important decisions being made. And the third one is that it's very difficult to reverse, which links to what you said. You can't scramble the omelette, and it's true. So if we, and I think, Serena, what you mentioned about having multidisciplinary teams that can understand like the whole system, it's crucial for this not having to reverse at the very end. Yeah, that's all.
I mean, we've talked quite a bit here about products and design. What about services? How do we take a design perspective when we look at things that aren't as tangible as, say, a mattress?
So I can speak a little bit about the new work that I've been doing, because design is indeed product design is part of the equation, but a product cannot be made circular unless the system makes it circular. So a product cannot be circular by itself. So at DSM Niaga, we have indeed started with product redesign. That's our core strong asset, because we have material science knowledge, we know about material, and we are really passionate for circularity. But what we realize is that we can't do this alone, and we want to be the enabling partner to allow companies of any kind, of any industry to go for the circular economy. So what I've been working on is to figure out, okay, how can we create a system that allows for all the stakeholders, so all the players in the value chain, to become an active player in creating a circular economy. And it's not an easy one. Of course, the role of regulations play out tremendous sort of role there, because we can say, look, there are coming EPR regulations in the future for specific product categories. So I can speak specifically for the Netherlands. EPR regulations will come up for furniture, and if players in the economy don't switch to a circular model, then we have to pay EPR fees. And so we can enable that, and by enabling the circular economy, that is an incentive for them not to pay those EPR fees. But that shouldn't be just the only driver. So we are really working to create a system which is sort of digitally supported, because we are in a digital world, to really enable that ecosystem for circularity.
How important is that systems perspective, Anna?
The systems, I mean, I fully agree with what Serena said. Like you might have or something that a product that looks super circular because you've applied modularity and product like life extension, or use super high quality materials. But if you don't have any system in place that makes sure that those materials, components, and the whole product is kept in use, then it's very challenging.
We have this expression that people say sometimes around the foundation's offices, this notion of zooming in and zooming out. I've always wondered what it's meant, but I've never had the courage to ask before. So what do we mean when we talk about zooming in and zooming out?
Well, so when we mean about what we mean about the zooming in and zooming out, this is what we call the mindset that we need to have to design for the circular economy, because designing for the circular economy, it's not just like another new discipline of design, it's the whole process, which means that it's an iterative one, and that it requires practice to learn from it. So when we talk about the zooming in, we are talking about understanding the user's needs. So we are designing something for those that are going to be using it, and we are creating access to that, to whatever the user needs. Well, not always, you can also sell, but yeah, I mean, for example, I'm going to talk about an example that I think it's a great one. So Repack, I'm not sure if everyone knows, but it's a company that created a service so that they would deliver envelopes or like packages that are reusable and made with high quality materials to the retail shops, so that they could do the online delivery of clothes for the customers. And this means that they have not designed at all the concept of an envelope or like a packaging. What they redesigned is the whole system. They realized that actually we don't need materials to be thrown out. What I need is a t-shirt, and I don't need the packaging. And this means zooming in into what these retail shops need, and zooming out into the whole system. They realize that if individuals, like the customers, can leave that envelope inside the mailbox in the cities and it can go back to the shop, that would be the perfect enabling condition to make sure that those pieces, those materials would come back, and we wouldn't need to extract new ones.
That's really interesting around the if we look at zooming in and zooming out, and you mentioned before just now, Serena, around circular products in a non-circular system. What if the reverse is true? What if you have the makings of a circular system or a mechanism to move materials back and forth, but the product itself isn't circular?
Oh, wow. That would be a good dilemma to have, because I would say that there will be a market pull effect that would actually wake people's minds to say, maybe it's time to make the product circular. So for me, what we've been starting to do is to create the redesign of the products. And we are thinking about the system circularity from different incentives, and I can speak to that. I wish we had the challenge that we would have to design products for a system that already exists, because I don't see that happening right now. And if you know, please share all the information, because I want to learn more.
I'd like to follow that question up, because I mean, we do this thing in this program called the Monday question, where we post a question each Monday and people respond to it. And Anna created one this week about people's favorite examples of circular design in action. And actually Repack was mentioned, Anna. We had Miwa, Alramo, Nike shoes, I think Loop were mentioned. And what's always interesting about those conversations is that the first thing people do often is they give the example of the cool thing in action, and then people start to slightly pick it apart, or slightly sort of like, well, it can't quite do this, or what's the LCN. I always sense that a lot of those criticisms kind of come back to, well, it's very hard for it, a lot of these innovations are speaking to a different system, and so it's quite hard to measure them against the metrics or success measures of the current system. Is that true of your innovations as well?
Well, so what we really try to do is to figure out how we can co-create with the partners who are already in the market and who are really committed to make the circular economy happen. And so, for instance, the case of the mattress that we just launched, Alpine really wants to take the mattress back themselves, and they want to recycle it themselves. So they will become the remanufacturers of the product together with us. So we would also enable that. And they also created their own leasing models. So that meaning that they lease out the mattresses either to consumers or to hotels, and then they can refurbish it, or they take it back and for other reuses. So these are the systems that we want to enable player by player, but we try to scale up and to say, okay, what are the common denominators across all the bulky products that we want to redesign and they're out there in the market? How can we enable even industrial symbiosis between these players? How can we enable a material marketplace between these players? Because let's face it, a circular economy is not an economy of ownership, it's an economy of sharing. And sharing can happen only if all the different companies in the market are willing to, not have the entire pie of the market, to have to give a little piece out, but to enlarge the pie and make the pie bigger, so that we can have gains not only from an economic point of view, but also from an environmental and health point of view. And so that's really what we dream of, is to create a common denomination across all the players, to create a system that enables the circular economy, so that in the future, we will have a continuous feedstock of recycled content, we will have a continuous loop of reuse, and we will not have to face trade-offs that we are facing today.
Great questions coming through in the Q&A box, James, aren't there? Really good to see the participation.
And I think that's quite a nice segue as well, where we are in the conversation, to sort of take some of these questions. And just before we do, to remind you, if you want to ask a question to the panelists, use the Q&A button. If you want to join in with the very lively chat that's happening as the conversation is what I'm doing, use the little chat button. Seb, any initial questions that have caught your eye?
So we've had a couple in that speak, I think they're sort of responding to the DSM stories, Serena, that speak to this kind of notion of materials health. So we've got one question in from Marissa that says, how does DSM Niagara verify the health, safety of the chemistry of its materials? And a similar question from, I'm going to say his name wrong, I'm very, very apologetic, Satya, who asked about sort of material transparency. They work in engineering assets, and they were just expressing the challenge of having material transparency in their industry. Are those your challenges as well?
Yeah, so I can speak to that, because part of my title is materials health, and I chose that title when I joined Niagara because it's my core passion. Despite I'm not a scientist, green chemistry changed my life, and I can speak about green chemistry and toxicology, over drinks, and somebody might find me boring, but I love it. So just to respond to that question, we are super lucky at DSM because we have state-of-the-art technology for testing materials down to the part per trillion. Part per trillion, just for those who are not familiar with the term, is like a sugar cube down a lake kind of tracing. So we are really able to trace materials down to that level. So we run when we have incoming goods, we do screening of incoming goods, and we screen for key organics and inorganics. And we do have at Niagara specifically a hazard principle policy. So meaning, like, for specific materials, no trace of that material is allowed, just because we want to make sure that those materials are as safe or toxic free as possible. And of course, we do run risk assessments of the products together with our toxicologists to make sure that they are as safe as possible.
Building on that a little bit, sorry, Seb, you're going to follow on.
No, please build on it, James.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to answer one point. We do actually have product passports. Sorry. Yeah, we've partnered with Provenance, and we actually met Provenance during one of the EMF events. And we do have 2 product passports out in the market that use blockchain technology. And they'll go down to, they track both the supply chain as well as the ingredient level. Sorry for interrupting, Seb. I forgot to answer that point.
No worries at all. I want to be a little bit greedy and throw 2 here, so I don't forget. And one is comes in from Liza around the role of the consumer, and specifically here around how do you integrate conscious but also subconscious signals from the consumer, that design is meant to be circular versus standard linear products. And I also kind of want to predicate that with a trend that I've seen over a number of these webinars around accessibility to the concept. How do we make sure that when we're taking a design approach, that we don't only talk in terms of those economies that can afford to shift the way they do things? So I guess where does the drawer and the consumer play in that kind of thinking?
Well, I mean, we try to be as consumer-centric as possible when it comes to the use of the product and the qualities of the product. So when we look at the product redesign, the end user is always at the heart of it, because in the end it will be the main customer. If a product is not consumer proof, there's not even worth. I mean, it's not even worth putting out in the market, because we need to make sure that there is viability. So if that answers your question, otherwise.
We've got a question in perhaps for Anna, which is, where do you start? Whether you're a business or a designer, how do you get started if you want to start? You might have some thoughts on this as well, of course, Serena, but how do you get started if you're like, I want to start designing differently, but how do I do it?
I think it's a very good question, and I honestly, like, I don't have the answers without a specific.
What, you're going to say I don't know?
A specific. No, because I think that what it requires is some directions, and you can't tell people like how they can start without having any context. But I think that what it's helpful, and it's to understand what's the state of the art of the company you are trying to change. So if you make an analysis, or I mean, it doesn't require like a big analysis, but if you try to understand what does your company currently look like, what type of materials you are using, like what's happening in all the different stages of like where you are treating materials, or you are like getting materials from suppliers, etc., as well as externally. So how does your supply chain look like? I think that that's a good start, and it's not easy. So maybe you want to start into like one of the product lines that you are doing, and then try to play and test and use some of the circular design strategies that might enable that product become more circular. And I'm going to use this moment also to add something which was related to all these comments that I mean, you said before that there were comments around the fact that some of these solutions are not 100% circular. And I want to take this sentence from Joe Iles, and it's that we are trying, right? Like, the system is not perfect, and all these solutions might be circular-ish. And with the ish, we mean that we are trying like our best. And it's very difficult to keep trying and keep being motivated when you know that the first thing you will receive, it's like negative news and like blaming and shaming and all that, right? So I would like, how do I start? Like, get inspiration from companies from the same sector, also from companies from different sectors, like trying to understand how it looks like, suck all the information of what circular design looks like, which we can talk about that later at the end, and get started, because circular design is about the whole process. And yeah, it won't be like, oh, one day I'm a circular designer.
I like that kind of sentiment, Anna, and I've heard before it described by IDEO in terms of a beacon and a bridging project, or this concept of beacon and bridging, that sometimes you need something that is a lighthouse, that is just this amazing project that might not be 100% perfect, but actually it galvanizes people's interests and it brings people into that way of thinking. And there are other times you need a bridging project, which might not be, it might not be as sexy, but actually it's baked in to the fundamentals of how an organization operates. And actually through the course of circular design, you need to shift between those two ends of the spectrum at different times. Sometimes you need to inspire, and sometimes you just need to fundamentally shift the way the system operates. And having that agility to move between the two allows you then to push that narrative forward. I just want to pivot very slightly because there's been a couple of questions here, and it's something that I've been thinking about recently as well, around COVID and the scenario we find ourselves in at the moment. And we've seen some rightly or wrongly, time will tell, decisions to return back to certain materials that have a single-use system surrounding it because of the risks around COVID, or materials that have been, and projects that have been designed for a reuse model over the last 12 to 18 months being rejected. In the really point example of that is kind of reusable cups in areas like Starbucks and coffee chains. When we come outside of the other side of COVID, I guess my question is that just a short-term blip, or does this mean we have to redesign again when we come out the other side? What are your thoughts, Serena?
Well, I think this is a spot-on question at this time. I mean, it's heartbreaking to see that there are steps back taken forcefully because by liability or the situation that mandates it. I think that that's something that I must say that we constantly talk all the time inside our company is we need to get ready for the 1.5 or 2 meters economy. We need to get ready for the fact that social distancing will continue, and we need to shift our mind frame accordingly. And that might mean that reuse models might require an additional step. I don't think that reuse models per se are a liability because of COVID, because you can, first of all, make a choice of material for the cups that is much safer. And then for the reuse model of the washing, you can hygienize it in a way that it's absolutely safe for COVID. So I don't think reuse model is necessarily a trade-off in COVID times. I think a shift of the reuse model needs to happen to adapt for COVID times.
We've got another question from Dave that I think you'll really like, Serena, or a member of my team thinks you'll really like anyway, which is, what is your point of view on companies using circular in their sustainability or product commitments, but only focused on product design change by using recycled content, for example, and not reflecting on the systems that really make the product or commitment circular or achieve circularity? That's from Dave.
Oh, well, where shall I start? I would say that I worked in some of those companies in the past, and I'm not going to mention any of them, but it's a start in the sense that, first of all, securing the feedstock of recycled content is not easy peasy. It's not something that it happens overnight. So it's already per se a good first step to secure enough feedstock of recycled content for products, and making sure that if we source, for instance, plastics for the ocean, they are like free of toxic chemicals, because when plastics are floating in the ocean for years, they absorb toxic stuff like a sponge. So I want to make sure that I just want to float that fun fact to you guys. But anyway, what is really important is to consider those as a journey. Of course, for us, we always talk about recycled versus recyclable versus circular. And that's really important, because if you make a claim that your product is recycled, yeah, I mean, great. It does a great scoring on your LCA model. If you say it's recyclable, it means it has a potential to be recycled. It's a great marketing tagline. But once again, you cannot guarantee circularity. It's just, yeah, it's good for marketing. That's really our position there. And really striving for circularity, that's the goal. So for me, unfortunately, talking about circularity and recycled and recyclable, I think, like, yeah, that's our position in the company, that it's a misuse of the language. and it can be misleading for the consumers as well. So we really try to pay a particular attention to those.
We're still getting lots of questions in thick and fast, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to all of them today. But what we will try and do as best as possible is get back to as many as we can, put some of the answers on Slack if we don't answer them today. I'm sure if we package some up that are specific to Serena, she'll be happy to provide some answers in slow time over the next couple of days so we can feed back to the group. But thank you very much so far for all your questions. Keep them coming. We should have time for a couple more at the end. But I think, Seb, that might be a nice segue into looking at this week's homework.
Stimulus. I like to call them stimuluses.
Stimuluses. Okay.
We're not at school anymore, James. Come on now.
It's all about. Anna, you set a question, a stimulus question, at the beginning of this week. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then can we get into some of the results, Seb?
Well, we mentioned it briefly earlier. We were asking people for their favorite examples of circular design in action, and many of the examples are ones that we're very familiar with. So Repack, Anna mentioned earlier, that was on the list. We had Algomo and Miwa, both packaging related solutions, reusable packaging related solutions. We had a few sharing economy ones. Toronto Tool Library, that made me think, Anna, when I saw the Toronto Tool Library example, about your point about it's not just about designing products, it's about, and actually I think James made this point as well, a good point that James made. Who would have thought that would have happened during this session, about it being not just about products but also being about services. Nike shoes, so lots of great examples coming through. There is one more question in the Q&A that would be good to pick up on, and then maybe with you, Anna, and maybe then we have a look at the stimulus for this week as well. There's a few people asking about, Anna, how do you define that something is 100% circular? And there's a couple other kind of measurement questions. I think I've seen LCA dropped in the chat window somewhere. It feels like that's chasing me around at the moment in various webinars. People wanted to know what LCA of various things that I'm talking about are. But yes, this notion of measurement, this notion of something being 100% circular, kind of links to our favorite examples. What do you say about all that?
Yeah, so I think that it's a very good question. And so it's difficult to be 100% circular when the ecosystem is not. That would be the straightforward answer. And yeah, I'm going also to steal this from Joe. I think he some days ago he was mentioning that we can't measure unless we understand very well what our values are. So if we know that we are designing for the 3 circular economy principles, and that's our goal, then we might be able to add some numbers and quantify success. But unless the whole mission doesn't go towards that direction, it will be very difficult, because there will be elements that are not part of this direction where we are trying to go. So I don't know if that helps, but I think it's, yeah.
Could I join on?
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you spend
debate?
time thinking about how circular you are and trying to measure that, Serena?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I wanted to just add on the LCA debate, because I built a couple of LCA models myself in the past, and when I was a student, and I one of the times I saw that the recycling would actually have a higher negative impact than just landfill for certain items. And that for me was like, oh my God, what kind of calculations did I make wrong? And actually, joining the Sanyaga, they also run LCA models for some of the products, and they actually found some issues with the way in which the database on which the LCA is built upon. And that's really where I have to call for a critical eye to be put on LCAs, because LCAs is a tool for research and development, but is not necessarily a tool for sharing information externally. LCAs should be taken really with a fine eye, because if you tweak the assumptions here and there, you can tell the story you want. And I can guarantee that because I've been behind those. So LCA is part of the equation, but you really need to use like other data and also common sense. And the 100% circularity claim is also misused many times because certain companies say, oh, it's 75% plus recyclable, or it means it's circular. And
LCA fund, I mean, I really music to my ears what you're saying, Serena. It feels like as well, I mean, I definitely echo the notion that there are a number of measures you can kind of use as a designer, or I'm sure, to help you sort of in your way, but it also feels like focusing only on how do you reduce your environmental impacts doesn't really tell you about where you're trying to go. And that's kind of what, you know, that's what I hear in your story about the kind of mono-material recyclability, and then actually how do we start layering on all these other value benefits? It can't just be about how recyclable it is at the end of its life. It's got to be a better, we're trying to improve the products that we use.
Seb, you know, I'm surprised people are asking you about LCA. I thought normally it was just about what color you were going to paint your front room. Which I still don't think we've got an answer on. My vote is still on.
True politician in that sense.
Anna, given the nature of this network is for our, you know, this session is for our C100 network, I guess one of the questions that would crop up if I was sat on the other side of the screen today was all of the elements that we've talked about today. How can we engage with the foundation around design moving forward? Can you talk a little bit around some of the plans that the design team have when we look at the C100 network and some of the plans for the next year?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we have this open to everyone community, so also for the people who are not part of the C100. But as you mentioned, we have some plans to create a space, and I will avoid giving any name because like we are designing that. Okay, for those who work in the creative departments of organizations and companies that are part of the C100, I mean, and that means any of these organizations that are more in the, any of these departments that you think are more in the design space, and that it's up to anyone to decide, because you might like, maybe it's called R&D, maybe it's called design, maybe it's called digital, like we don't know that. And we want to provide this so that people can have access to exchange best practices, to get inspiration from specific webinars that might be curated by us, like a few, but also to connect and try to become very entrepreneurial and test, bounce ideas, prototype, and initiate hopefully collaborative projects that might help the teams come together in organizations, because we believe that designers are the translators of different disciplines, and that from these teams, they might be able to initiate changes also within their organizations. We'll have more news in the coming weeks.
So by the sounds of things, building almost a design community within the C100 network to create shared learning, shared opportunities, and information exchange to advance that circular design agenda. Is that my
indeed? Yes, yes. Yeah.
In the chat window, we are seeing lots of people already talking about different products, you know, this and that, and it's really interesting to see. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about systems in this session, and I mean, Anna and Serena are obviously both experts on systems and system design, but for us mere mortals, beginners in the world of systems design, we do have a little stimulus or tool or piece of homework that people can do to kind of start exercising this muscle from our circular design guide. And if I share, or indeed, if you, I'm happy to share my slides here. Maybe you could talk us through that journey, Anna.
Yeah, sure. So we like, this is a how did you call it? Stimulus. Yeah, so this is a stimulus exercise to start practicing what circular design is, and you might find out what it means for you, and it will probably be different for everyone, for every person. and every company. One of these exercises, which is much more structured, is the product journey mapping, which can be found on the circulardesignguide.com website under the workshops part. And basically what this exercise is about, it's to picking up a product, anything that you might like or you have at home, and try to ask this question over and over again. What happens to it after its first use? And it's very playful. Let's read what it says. It asks, keep asking what will happen next to your product or materials to help you map the use cycles of your product. So it's very simple, and I drew one actually. So you can take any paper and try to see, okay, I have a table, what would happen next? I can give it to someone else, like a friend. I can bring it to a second-hand shop. Then one of the parts of the table might break. What happens next? What happens if I bring it to, if I leave it on the street? What are the, oh.
You're still there, Anna?
I think my connection is not good.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Sorry, I got a message. So yeah, what would happen if I leave it on the street? What are the, and then we will discover what are the systems in place for that specific product. And this is very step by step. The other option, Sep.
Next slide.
Yeah, please. Is this the next slide there? I mean, I can't see. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, yeah, the slide's up, Anna. We're seeing a building, a diagram of a building here.
Yeah, okay, cool. Sorry, it's because I keep seeing the previous one. Well, so the diagram of the building. So this one is about picking up a product also and try to build how that product was created, trying to understand what were the resources, energy, like anything embedded to the creation of that, for the creation of that product. And then it's more like creative and freestyle, but that will also help us draw the connections between one stage to the other and see whether at the end of the use of that product, or when the different components are disassembled, is there anything in place so that can go back to the beginning or to any other point of the production of that product. And yeah, this is a very creative one, and what can allow you to do also is to spot what are the intervention points where you could actually start doing something from today. So maybe there's a decision that you make, and then like within a couple of weeks, you can make that system a bit more circular. Yeah. So we will upload these pictures in the Slack group.
I like the message to think like a 5-year-old. So imagine you don't know, or, you know, almost separate yourself a little bit from the answers that you might already have and start exercising this muscle of thinking about what actually happens, and imagine you're discovering it for the first time. I think that's where you get the most out of that journey.
Seb, our chief technical officer, always goes to his drawings with a 5-year-old, which is his nephew, and saying, what do you understand or what would you change? So using children is always good.
Anna, thanks for that. And as you mentioned, we'll upload all of those schematics onto the relevant shared work areas so people can have a look at. Of course, it's good to see that, you know, the stimulus creating circular stimulation. Interesting. I know exactly what would happen to a table if I left it on my street, but we won't go into that. Thank you very much, Serena and Anna, as our guests for this week, exploring some of the, I guess, the tip of the spear here around circular design and design for products and for services. There are still loads of questions coming in, which we'll try and get answered over the coming days and weeks through the various channels. Do feel free to continue to challenge and question, and you know, challenge is always good around these sort of topics. and good to see you getting engaged through the Slack channels and the various forums over the coming weeks. So thanks very much to my guests. Thanks to Seb. Next week, we go back to the usual time of 1600 UK time. So that's GMT +1, which will be on May the 14th. The homework is on Slack to create a systems map and share it, and to tell us about your favorite circular economy study, and the trios, groups of 3 project groups within the community. If you haven't found 2 other people for a trio yet, do get involved there. There's lots of detailed information about how you do that on Slack and create those smaller working groups. So from me, from Seb, from Serena and Anna, and from the high powered team behind the scenes fielding your questions, thanks very much for joining in this week. You know where we are. Stay safe, and we look forward to talking to you again in week 3, when we'll be looking at business models with our very own Ella and Alice. Thanks very much, and goodbye.